Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, joined by attorney Cesar Gavidia, and today we're going to talk about one of our cases which, for a client we've been representing against the Guardian and Berkshire Disability Insurance Company. And Cesar, this particular case is one in which it was a pediatrician who had been suffering with chronic eye disorders, with glaucoma issues, and also retinal atrophy. And she's been a client since basically 2008, so we're talking, almost 13, 14 years. And when it comes to the Berkshire and Guardian disability insurance policies, I remember back when the client first contacted us and she was working in her practice as a pediatrician with this eye disorder and already starting to think about, I'm having trouble certain physical movements, head movements, bending over to see the patients, quick and rapid movements, especially with treating children. And when I get that, I'm getting dizzy effects and fogginess in my eyes and spots and things like that. Plus I'm on call and I don't know how I'm going to feel at different particular times. So she was worried about, how much longer was she going to be able to do this? Plus she was so young. And so she wanted the review of the policy. She wanted guidance because she had bought this policy many years before. So what do you commonly see with the doctors, especially? A lot of doctors have the Berkshire or Guardian disability insurance policies in terms of policy language moving forward for a doctor.
Well, for most of our physician clients or physicians who contact us to ask us to look over their policies for them, kind of discuss the potential roadmap or what something might look like if we're helping them file a disability claim, most of them approach us and have these Guardian disability insurance policies with own occupation definitions of disability. And the reason that's important is because basically what they've bought is an insurance policy that insures their own specialty, their own occupation. In this case, our client being a pediatrician, at the time that she became disabled, she was working as a pediatrician and therefore, insured as a pediatrician. And so if there was there came a time where she was not capable of working or performing the substantial material duties of a pediatrician, the policy would kick in or would presumably kick in to pay those benefits.
And talk about the residual disability language, because that's a big thing that we had to do for her. How does that come into play?
So typically, you have total disability, you have partial disability, or what we also what's also called as residual disability, would be where someone is unable to perform one or more of the substantial material duties of their occupation. So if, for instance, they weren't able to treat a certain type of patient or a patient that might need more significant care or some type of procedure done, and because of their condition they weren't able to perform that type of procedure any longer, but were still working in some other clinical roles, still earning income from their occupation, that's where really partial disability would step in to pay that difference in income loss that they would have. And usually there's a threshold of about 20% loss of income, which is what we see in most Guardian policies, and in this case for our client, 20% loss of income caused by your disability, then your policy steps in to kind of make up that difference in income.
So what started to happen in her particular case was she initially said, I can't do on-call anymore. So she gave up hospital call. And obviously for anyone who's a pediatrician, they know that a lot of their initial clients come to them because they're introduced through their hospital call to new babies in the hospital, and then they become the pediatrician on call, and people say, oh, I like that pediatrician, I'm going to start visiting you. So big source of business started to dry up for her because of the fact that she wasn't doing the hospital call. The other thing is that people who would come visit her, because many parents like to go interview a pediatrician before the baby's even born, and she would have to tell them, look, when your baby's born, I'm not going to be able to come to the hospital. And that's kind of a turnoff for any parent to basically say, well, what do you mean you can't come to the hospital? And she's like, well, I'm not doing the hospital rounds or any of those things. So at that point, though, it was interesting because she came to us and said, well, if I'm not doing the hospital anymore, am I totally disabled now? To which we explained, no, because you still have your office practice you're doing. But she said, Greg, I was doing 35 to 40 patients a day. Now I'm doing like 10. And so it got to the point where you have this reality of, yes, she could still do the office practice, but by missing so much other business and not having new sources of many clients coming in, that she was almost spending more on her business than what she was making, yet she could still do one or more of the duties of her job, but yet not make money. So where do you draw the line, and how does it work when, yes, you could still do some things, but you're not able to, you're not making any money. So you can't, like, you're doing the job, but you're not doing the job to the point where you're earning a living.
Yeah, and there's interesting distinctions in these particular guardian policies, because under the partial disability provision, if your income drops under a certain amount, let's say it drops under 80%, let's say, usually it's like that 20%. So if it drops under 80%, then the policy will kick in to pay the full benefit, the entire benefit. And that might be sufficient. Now, in some cases, you would have a policy that has lifetime benefits that would extend after a certain age. If you're totally disabled, it's usually not when you're residually or partially disabled. And then it kind of becomes a little bit more important to say, well, no, this really needs to be total disability, because I'm not really functioning the way I was functioning before. Basically, my entire practice is dried out. This isn't just a question of paying my full benefit. This is basically a complete deterioration of my business, of my medical practice, and I'm totally disabled. And that happens. I mean, it's almost like you take away the nutrients from a plant.
Right.
The plant just becomes smaller, and it's just a better version of a smaller version of itself. It dies, and that's essentially what could happen to a practice, and what happened in this case.
But you bring up a great point, because there's kind of this unwritten type rule to whether you have an 80% loss of your prior income or 75% loss of your income, even though you're still working, you qualify for the full benefit. So in a way, you can make a very strong argument to the disability company to say that if I can't earn more than 20 or 25% of what I used to earn, then it's tantamount to me being totally disabled. So why do I even need to work to earn 20 or 25% of what I used to earn? And we've made that argument many times before, and sometimes it's accepted and sometimes it's not, based upon the facts and circumstances. The other thing that was very interesting for this pediatrician is that she gave up certain things that were aggravating her, and especially the on-call, because she would take medications as well, and certain things, so she couldn't commit to the unknown schedule, but she could commit to her own schedule, was the fact that her medical condition was deteriorating. The atrophy of her retina was getting worse over time, which was expected. But in some situations, the objective evidence, meaning the eye scans that she was having and things like that, and on examination, the pressures in her eyes, and all the different examinations, and it's very, with ophthalmologists, when they do their exams, you need a degree just to read their notes. But some of the objective evidence wasn't keeping up with the deterioration of her symptoms, meaning that she was reporting worse symptoms that may not have been, we don't know the scale that matched the findings, meaning the same findings she had 2 years earlier when she went in for her objective exams were the same, yet her subjective complaints were worse. And so is that, we were able to overcome that and prove that, but what else can you do to show that, look, do you have to have that objective evidence stay in line with the deterioration of your subjective complaints?
I don't think you always have to have that. I mean, in particular in this case, I mean, you have very strong objective evidence. You have these eye exams, and certainly in ophthalmology, you're dealing almost, entirely with all this objective evidence. But there's a subjectivity to the vision loss and the vision perception, because that patient's going to report to you exactly, if they're reading a chart, they're reporting to you what they're perceiving those letters to be, if they see those letters at all, right?
Right.
The exam isn't necessarily objectively telling you that they can't read that letter or read that line. The patient's telling you that. But it's what they're perceiving through their vision. And I think, look, there's a very high degree of credibility when it comes to that type of perceptive vision loss, whether, in this case, seeing flashes, seeing, perhaps different things in the field of vision. So I think there's a very deep correlation with the credibility of those subjective complaints with the objective evidence and the objective proof. Also, you're talking about ophthalmologists who may have, decades of experience in treating these eye conditions and treating these patients and hearing these same complaints from these patients. So of course, it's within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that they know that this is what they're perceiving, what they're seeing is normal in this type of case, even if perhaps it may be far worse than what the objective test or objective exams are showing.
And I know also we had to work very closely with the ophthalmologist to explain what it meant to be totally disabled as opposed to not working at all, because it reached a point where the claimant went to the doctor and said, I can't do it anymore, and had to get the doctor to sign off on that. Because if the doctor didn't sign off on it, then the claim would have never been supported. So we had to work through that as well to get that medical support. And really what happened was, it was one of the claims where this client was on residual for like a 7 or 8 year period and then eventually transitioned into total disability. And at that point wanted to engage in some kind of other occupation, because it wasn't that she couldn't do anything at all, just that she couldn't do the physical requirements of a pediatrician. And having the own occupation, true own occupation definition disability, which Guardian sold to her, she was able to go into another occupation that requires totally different skills and collect her full total disability benefit. And the other thing you touched upon, which is a big thing in Guardian policies, is the lifetime. Because they're one of the companies that has that sliding scale lifetime, which says by age 45, if you're totally disabled, then you'll get your full benefit for the rest of your life. After age 45 to age 65, which is a 20-year period, it decreases by 5%. So if at age 46 you become totally disabled, then after age 65, you'll get 95% of your max benefit. So you mentioned earlier, the date of total disability could be critical. In this policy, it's a sliding scale, so it's not a big hit at 5% per year, but we have many other policies where if you're not totally disabled by age 60, for example, you lose your lifetime benefit.
Right, it's the all or nothing.
Yeah, and that is a tremendously big deal, because like we have clients who want to keep working and are even working at a loss or barely breaking even. They go past that cutoff date and it could jeopardize millions of dollars of benefits in the future.
And that's why it's important. Once you kind of get into that really significant income loss, when you're in that range where they're almost paying you your full benefit, or they are paying you almost your entire benefit, you got to take a realistic view of what's going on and the circumstances, because really you may not have much of a practice. You're keeping it open, perhaps keeping your employees employed. They've been with you for so long. There's certainly it's a difficult decision to make, but it's also a question of you maybe working against yourself and working against your own claim.
And Cesar, we've represented hundreds, if not thousands, of doctors, many with Guardian policies, and especially through the application process into the claim handling, where we are the only voice on behalf of the doctor. We do all the communications with the carrier. We fill out all the claim forms. We work with the doctors to get all the attending physician statements completed with the client. There's no phone calls or anything from the carrier without us being involved, and it's always given all of our clients a peace of mind. And for this particular client, for the past 13 years, every month we discuss the claim as needed. Anytime the carrier needs anything, she only goes back and forth with us. And moving forward, we always make sure we're doing everything, reviewing the medical records to make sure her claim's protected as she moves forward with her claim. So it's great representing these doctors. We're here, to help them with their claims. And if you're someone in particular who has a Guardian or Berkshire long-term disability claim, feel free to reach out to Cesar or myself. We'd love to provide you with an immediate free review of your long-term disability policy and let you know immediately how we can help you. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.